created man as a model that revealed his wisdom, the excellency of his knowledge and his intelligence. So the man was an embodiment of God's essence as the image. He was the manifestation of God's intelligence. So he was like the zenith of creation. Now when you see an angel, he manifests light, he moves like thunder, you would think that's the zenith of God's wisdom, but that's not true. Man is the one created as the demoteur of God. He's the model of God. And why is that so? Man does not really manifest thunder. Man does not manifest lightning. It is God himself that dwells in man. So it is God that man manifests. The creator can now be inside creation for the first time. It was an so much about God. They knew he was God. They knew he was almighty. They knew he was the creator of the ends of the earth. They knew all things were created for him, but they didn't know him deep enough to give him a name. So they called him holy. The word holy is not a name. The word holy is a class of existence. So the angels categorize God to live in a class of his own. That means whatever we do, whatever we have, you carry a superior version. If we love, then your love is different. If we have power, your power is different. We have seen that we can do a number of things, but we have also understood that whatever we have and whatever we can do, you are in a superior order. So they decided to aggregate the totality of God's being and ascribed it as holy, meaning separate, incorruptible, and existing in your own class. So when you go to Revelations 4, the 24 elders, all the other angels, holy, holy, holy is the Lord. So if you study the Bible, everywhere God was encountered in his fullness, you couldn't even articulate the figure. When Gabriel saw him, he said from his waist upward was like the sun in its strength. You couldn't look at him. The Bible actually ascribed, you couldn't look at him. The Bible actually ascribed that God dwells in light, unapproachable. The angels that approach God, you will notice that the Bible said they covered their faces. It said the seraphims, they covered their faces and they cried, holy, holy is the Lord. The 24 elders, they fell on their faces because the effulgence of the glory was too enormous for you to behold. So they knew a being was there, but they couldn't articulate him. Come to think of it, there was nothing in creation that could trap the totality of God. The dimensions of God was too enormous for creation to capture. So it was impossible for the angel to articulate God's figure, to tell what God actually looked like. They could tell you God operates, he shines like the stars, he shines like the lightning, he moves like the lightning. They couldn't articulate him. So holy was the safest way to categorize God until God wanted to make man. God now said, this time let's create something that can embody our figure. And he said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. This is why the business of God with men, angels peep to understand it. Peter said, as touching the subject of salvation, he said the angels were peeping to see what was going on between God and this being, because the things God was saying were not things that have been said before. Nothing can trap the whole of God. Do you know what it means to articulate? How can creator be captured within creation? It's not a syllabus that angels could understand, and they didn't know it was possible until God created man. This is why in Colossians 2:9 the Bible said it pleased the Father that the fullness of the Godhead should dwell in Jesus bodily, because Jesus was a man. He came in the figure of a man, and the man figure was the creation designed to trap God. So when God wanted to create man, the first thing he installed in man, for man to be what he wanted, was for the man to bear his image, was the man to be a vessel that could contain God. Then the second thing God did was that he gave man his likeness. The word image is the word Selim. The word likeness is the word Demotea. The word Selim speaks of glory and essence. That means the essence of God is in man. Then the word Selim is the word Demotea. The word Demotea is the word character. Is the word we use for a model. So when a new car is created, you will notice that they will pick 1, 2, 3 out of it and use it as a model before they can begin to create more. So God created man as a model that revealed his wisdom, the excellency of his knowledge and his intelligence. So the man was an embodiment of God's essence as the image. He was the manifestation of God's intelligence. So he was like the zenith of creation. Now when you see an angel, he manifests light, he moves like thunder, you will think that's the zenith of God's wisdom, but that's not true. Man is the one created as the Demotea of God. He's the model of God. And why is that so? Man does not really manifest thunder. Man does not manifest lightning. It is God himself that dwells in man. So it is God that man manifests. The creator can now be inside creation for the first time. It was an impossibility until man was created. So when God was creating man, he created man to represent him. So he gave man his image, he gave man his likeness, and he didn't stop there. The authority God wielded over the earth, he handed to man. He said in Genesis 1:28, let them have dominion. So every authority I would have wielded if I was to be on the face of the earth, I delegate it to this man. So if I want to do something on earth, the man does it on my behalf. Dominion over the birds of the air, dominion over the fish of the waters, dominion over everything that creepeth upon the face of the earth. These were jurisdictions where God manifested his authority. He handed it over to man. In fact, the Bible said in Psalm 116 verse 15 that the heavens belong to God. He said, but the earth he has given to the sons of men. So we were created to be agents of dominion. I tell people, even the weakest man hates oppression. That's why tyranny does not survive. Because no matter how powerful you are, if you want to oppress man, something in him will remind him he was created for authority. He will rebel at some point. It's his design. And God didn't stop there. God gave man his presence. Eden is not just a place. Eden is a portal. Eden is an atmosphere. The Bible said in the cool of the day, it said the voice of God came walking in the garden. You didn't know where God came from and how God exited, because that was a moment. It wasn't just a place. The word in the cool of the day is the word ruakiom. It means moment of the spirit. So the man walked in moments of the spirit. The man literally walked within the context of encounters. He carried God's presence. And the last thing God wanted to do to complete the circuit of his creation was for him to carry the life of God. So the Bible says God planted a tree in the middle of the garden called the tree of life. He wanted the man to eat it so that his metamorphosis would have been completed. The man would have evolved into a being that literally manifests God. Then Satan saw it and said, there is problem here. This is danger. If God creates another being that is exactly like him, then our agenda is completely thwarted. God is in heaven. Angels are supervising his work. We are struggling. What will now happen if a being like God is now walking on earth? Remember, when Satan fell, the Bible says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth. The great deceiver has come. So the jurisdiction Satan entered into was earth. Now God is bringing a being into earth who was exactly like him. How can we now express government? So the study of Satan was to look for a way to dethrone the man. And the only way to dethrone the man was for the man to self-destruct, because nothing could kill him. Sickness couldn't kill him. Nothing, no power in the demonic realm could affect the man. The only way the man would fall was the man to rebel against God. And that was why the weapon Satan brought to Eden was not sickness. Sickness won't work in Eden. It wasn't poverty. Poverty won't work in Eden. It wasn't failure. Failure can't work in Eden. Look at the man God created. Every animal God named, God created. God told the man to name it. The man didn't need study. He woke up from sleep, and started naming animals. When God cast a deep sleep on the man, removed his rib and created a woman, the man stood up. He didn't need to consult with anybody. He said, this is the bone of my bone, the flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of the man. That means even when the man is asleep, intelligence was still at work. Satan saw that creation. He knew failure won't work there, sir. Sickness won't work there. Even the mosquitoes were singing lullaby for the man. When the man wants to sleep, the mosquitoes helped him to sleep. I can't bring malaria here. I can't bring cancer here. The guy was in authority. He was functioning like God. So what do I do to destroy him? Rebellion. So he came and taught man to rebel against God. The moment the man rebelled against God, he lost his authority. He lost the presence of God because he was driven out of the garden. He lost the nature of God because the Bible said that you are of your father the devil. The lust of your father shall ye do. He lost the essence, the character of God that made him function as God, at God's frequency. So the man became a fallen creature. So until Christ came, until the gospel is preached, the fact of the matter is that Satan was in charge. Because the authority God gave the man, he handed to Satan. Until the gospel is preached, man was a slave of the devil. Because they fell, they know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. I have said, ye are gods, because we are the children of the Most High. But you fall like one of the princes. You can't take away this fact that the devil became the god of this world and was in charge. You can't take away the fact that man was falling. So when man fell, all of the packages God put together to bring him back to the God class is what we call the gospel. So when we talk about the gospel, it's not a religious message. When we speak of the gospel, it's a divine package designed to bring you back to the God class, designed to bring you back to the God realm, because you were created to function in the God class. The gospel is not designed to make you a Christian. The gospel is not designed to add you to a church. Now, when you hear the gospel, you will be added to a church in order to be discipled. But the goal of the gospel is not to make you a religious man. The goal of the gospel is to bring you back to the class of divinity. It's to bring you back to the God class. That's why Peter was speaking in 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 4. He said, whereby he has given us exceeding great and precious promises. He said that by this we might become partakers of his divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. We were designed to partake of divinity. You know, many people will tell you, I'm just human, I'm just human, what can I do? Who told you that? Where did you read it? Where did you read it? When he created you in the garden, Genesis 1:26, he said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. You fell. When you fell, the message that was brought back to you was not to make you human. You are already human. The message brought to you was to make you a new creature. A creature in the class of God. Because you were created to operate in the class of God. That's why when you study the etymology of the word gospel, is the word bisora in the Hebrew. And it's the word euangelion in the Greek. The word euangelion is a message that is too good to be true. That's the meaning of the gospel. That word is rarely used, even in the Greek. It's a message too good to be true. When a Jewish man used the word bisora, a Greek man uses the word euangelion. It's not just telling you about a good news. No, it's actually telling you about a news too good to be true. That's the meaning of the word euangelion. In fact, it's like a prisoner who has been condemned. You know, I went to the prison the other time, to visit prisoners. And I saw on their board, they wrote condemned 2. I said, what does this mean? They said, these ones have been sentenced to death. They are waiting for the day of their execution. So those ones are alive, but they are dead men walking, because they are condemned criminals. Now, when a criminal is condemned, he has passed the face of justice. Everything has been done to save him, and his case is forgotten. That's a condemned person. He's waiting for one thing, and his death. At that level, the only thing that can change his status is presidential pardon. So when a prisoner is condemned, it's possible that the president can wake up one day and go to the register of condemned criminal and say, let this one go. Now, when you come to that prisoner and tell that prisoner, let's go out, do you know what he's expecting? Is it today I will be hung? Because the only message he's waiting for is death. Then you now come to that criminal and tell him, my brother, you just received a presidential pardon. What it means is that you will not be killed, and every effect of this judgment on you has been erased. So you will not even be called an ex-convict. You will go back and be restored as a citizen. That kind of message is euangelion. When we preach the gospel, we are talking to dead men that life has come. When we preach the gospel, we are talking to men falling from glory, that glory has been restored. We are talking to men who have given up on life, that they have been reabsorbed into the God class. That's what the gospel is. It is euangelion, a message too good to be true. And you know what? That kind of message cannot come from a man. It comes from God. Because a gospel is also a royal declaration that procures salvation to one who does not deserve it.